Hello, my name is Darren Thomas and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to be talking about ways to deal with working with different class sizes as a teacher or as an English teacher, science teacher, whatever. So, there are many different ways you could break this down, but I wanted to try to make it simple and go from one-on-one, which is basically tutoring, which is something that is much more common in the field of English as English tutors and in the field of TESOL, etc., and also large classes. Now, before I go any further, large class really depends on the discipline and also the personality of the teacher. For example, if you are a PE teacher, you're probably used to classes of 50, maybe even 60 kids. If you are a science teacher, if you've ever had to set up a lab, it gets difficult beyond 20 students to run a lab well. It's possible, but it starts to become a little bit of a stressful situation. So when we're talking about large, it really depends on the discipline and also the personality of the teacher. Many teachers, they get energy when they have 35, 40 kids, even in like a English writing class. Whereas other teachers, they're exhausted when they have 20 kids in a class. So when we talk about large, it's really up to you to decide if your class meets the criteria for being large. Now let's talk a little bit about one-on-one. Again, this is a luxury that most of us as teachers never get to experience, but it does happen in some specified fields, especially very technical, or also things like in the languages. So some of the advantages of a one-on-one is obviously the high interaction. It's just you and the student. You're able to give lots of feedback, there's lots of back and forth, and you're able to adjust the teaching and the strategizing to the needs of the specific student. Now, of course, we are taught to try to meet the needs of all our students, but that is very, very difficult to do with 30 kids, but very, very, very possible with one. But there are also some problems, when you only have one student, you don't have that classroom energy. This can be very difficult, especially for the more extroverted students who just love, even extroverted teachers who just love to be around lots of people. The one-on-one interaction may not be the most exciting thing for them as they want that peer support. Also, a lack of support, so there's no one to really help the student besides the teacher. And there are times where there could be interpersonal issues. For example, you and the student are not able to get along. Now, of course, if there's 20 other kids in the room, you can both kind of take a time out, step away from each other, and the student can go deal with friends and you can go help other students. But when it's one-on-one, there's no one else to be with but each other, which can be very challenging at times. Now, in order to have success working one-on-one, there are several things you can do. If you look at the first bullet here, we talk about explain the expectations. So just like when you deal with a larger class, you have to lay down the rules and the guidelines for what is expected and how things are going to be done. But having said that, you must also keep in mind bullet number 2 here, which is being flexible and adaptable. You have to be able and willing to adjust what you are doing to try to meet the needs and the wants at times of the students, to help them to have the motivation to continue to fight through the battle of trying to understand the content with you. So you also need to be flexible as well. And of course, and this is only for those of us who are doing like private tutoring and have this luxury, it may be necessary to go in different directions. Sometimes in music, the student and the teacher are not able to see eye to eye. I've taken music lessons from people, and one time we did have to separate from the teacher because our ideas were not in alignment with each other. And so the only way to go forward was for her to find other students to teach and for me to find another teacher to teach me. And so this happens at times in one-on-one type tutoring situation, which again are much more common in English or music, etc. Let's move on, shall we? The next one that we're looking at, and this is the final one basically, is large classes. And of course, the pros and cons are very obvious. When you have a large class, you can have increased student-to-student interaction, so that peer interaction, which is considered by many to be very, very important. However, there's also a con, and this is particularly true for the teacher. The workload increases. For the teacher, the number of assignments that they have to mark goes up, the behavior problems go up, the preparation goes up, everything seems to increase as the class size increases. So it's much more taxing and trying for the teacher when the classes get larger. And again, what is large depends on your own personality and also the discipline in which you find yourself. Now, to have success with a large class, the number one rule is organization and processes. You must set in place how rules for how the class will be run, expectations on how to do things, when to do things, what to do, etc. This must be set in place so that these mechanisms of daily life get to the point where they're running automatically. The teacher, which is probably you, needs to focus on teaching and not on the management and the administrative stuff. This stuff needs to be automatic, and the teacher's job is to deal with unique problems. But how to line up, how to come into the classroom, how to leave the classroom, when to go to the bathroom, when to raise your hand, all these things must be drilled at the beginning so that they are not addressed over and over again throughout the semester and distracting from the learning experience. And of course, if you look at the second bullet, don't be afraid to try different types of setups. So you can see here we have 4 types: whole class, group work, pair work, individual, etc. Now, whole class is, of course, like a lecture style direct instruction method. This is frequently frowned upon in today's 21st century teaching approaches, but there are times when whole class is appropriate. For example, if you are dealing with something that is new, you probably want everybody together so they can figure it out. If you're dealing with something complicated, you probably want everybody together to figure it out together. Once they begin to develop a little bit of mastery, you can split them off into group work, pair work, individual. But at the beginning of a new experience, or when something is highly complicated, it's probably better to move together before you separate and do your learning separately. Group work and pair work are often, similar. How big should groups be? Depends on you. Probably wouldn't go much beyond 4 or 5 students because then you start to get some social loafing. But group work is an excellent way to get students to interact with each other. Pair work takes group work to the next level in that they're only working with one other person. And of course, individual work. Again, often individual work is being frowned upon today in 21st century, but there are times for it. For example, if you want the students to calm down after an exciting experience, individual work could be great. We've all heard of silent reading, especially the teachers from America. After recess, that's individual work, time to chill and calm down. Other times is when you want to start to prepare the students for the ultimate, final exam or test or whatever, when they're going to be assessed individually anyway, so they need to learn how to work alone as well. That's another valuable skill that's often being lost. And of course, the last one, I've kind of alluded to this, using the students. So this kind of lines up with the first bullet in that you want to have the students help you to run and manage the classroom. Have somebody in charge of turning the lights on, organizing the desk, putting the stuff away, the books away, organizing things. Let the students be a part of the management of the classroom so that it decreases your workload on these little things that don't take a lot of intellectual power but need to be done, and so that the teacher can focus on the weightier matters, if you will. So, in this video, we've looked at how to address and how to work inside different class sizes. And so basically I've broken into 2 categories: one-on-one tutoring and also large class sizes. So with one-on-one, you have the power of high interaction, high feedback, but sometimes maybe you don't get along. You must be flexible and make sure that you are always trying to find ways to help the students. And lastly, for large classes, lots more fun for the students, a lot more work for the teacher. But if you keep in mind organization and the different styles of having the class work together, whole class, group work, pair work, individual, the students can reap the benefits of an excellent learning experience. So my name is Darren Thomas, and I'm the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Thank you for listening.